let's get to the VP conversation that I've teased like 18 times at this point. So we're getting a clearer picture of who the top candidates are likely to be. It's actually funny because two different news organizations reported two different, like, this is definitely her top three. But it looks like the top contenders are Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, my personal fave. He's a former high school teacher. He's a veteran. He flipped a very red district in Minnesota. He wins the state easily. I'm going to play in a minute. He speaks very, very comfortably and easily about middle-class issues. And he's actually the one that came up with the weird tag that I do think is effective. Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, whose favorability ratings in the state are sky high. New poll had him at like 61% approval rating in the state of Pennsylvania. He won his election for governor so easily, running against a guy who, again, a lot of people thought was pretty weird. He sounds like Jewish Obama, many are saying. I think when we play some of him, you will see that as well. Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky. Andy is the most popular Democratic governor in the entire country, even in spite of the fact that, first of all, he was governor, he got himself reelected, he was governor during a very fraught political time in terms of COVID in what is now a hard red state, and yet he still has very high approval rating. He is pitching himself hard for the job and really trying to strike like an Appalachian contrast with J.D. Vance as well. That's been effective at times. You have another governor, North Carolina's Governor Roy Cooper. He and Kamala have known each other for quite a while, going back to their time as AG. Another Democrat winning in a fairly red state, raising the question, especially with the different coalition Kamala brings to the table. Hey, if we have Roy Cooper on the ticket, is it possible to put North Carolina in play? Joe Biden only lost it by less than 2 points last time around, so question mark there. And then the other one people are talking about is Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. Astronaut, swing state, et cetera. He also has a pretty high approval rating within the state of Arizona. Well-known guy, has some issues. Unions are not in love with him. And then there's also the issue of initially, if he were to be VP, the Democratic governor would pick his replacement. However, that replacement then would have to run again in 2026, I think it is. So a little bit, dicier in terms of the Senate and giving up that seat. In any case, we put together, because we wanted to go deep on each of these as her pick is relatively imminent. We'll probably get it, I think, within like the next week. We'll learn who her top pick is. So we wanted to go deep on each of these individuals, give you guys a real sense of them. Our team has done a fantastic job pulling together some clips so you can get a sense of the type of rhetoric and their affect, their vibe, so to speak. So let's go ahead and start with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz talking here recently. Let's take a listen.
Why is it so hard to understand? When somebody else gets some rights, it's not like a damn pie. Oh, somebody got a bigger piece of pie. I don't get it. Rights aren't that way. There's enough for everybody. There's enough for everybody to be included. Same thing with jobs. Same thing with housing. Same thing with health care. So, you saw it. We are not going to allow them to make the case. Yes, they're a threat, but we're not going to stay in their frame. We're not going to stay where they're at. We're not going to play their game. We called them out for the weird nonsense that they believe, and we presented a different argument to the American public. One where everybody matters, one where we can achieve, one where we solve problems.
So he's got a lot of pluses in terms of, he's a very good communicator. He's got a good, natural everyman vibe. For those of you who are just listening, he's there in just like a t-shirt and a hat, and it doesn't feel try hard. It feels very natural. He flipped a red congressional seat. This is James Medlock tweeted this morning, in a largely rural area, held it even in a cycle where Trump won that district by plus 15. He's the only Democrat to win that district since 1992. Like I said, very popular in Minnesota. And he has the rare combination of having the moderate everyman vibe, but his track record in the state is really quite impressive. With a 1-seat majority, they passed universal free school lunches. They did great legislation on labor, on wages, on the environment, sort of across the board in terms of the progressive priorities. So you would be very much pleasing, I can tell you, the progressive young base of the party in particular, who are very Walz-pilled at this point, I think for good reason. But he also has that swing state appeal and Midwestern appeal that could be a real electoral asset. And the last thing I'll say about him, Saagar, is, as I mentioned before, he is the one who, in his sort of cable news VP auditions, came up with the tag of weird that has been rapidly embraced by Kamala Harris. So I would think that that would be a point in his favor, that he's already sort of proven his effectiveness in terms of messaging against the GOP.
He's not bad. Normal vibe, all of that. I would say, on balance, a stronger Democrat than many others. My only case against him would be Harris is up by +6 in Minnesota, and we're in the fight of our lives in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and Wisconsin. The translation of Minnesota to the rest of the states may make some sense, but it seems better to me to pick an overwhelmingly popular Democratic governor of that state if we're just going for PA alone. Remember, too, PA is probably the most contested of the big 3 Midwestern states that Trump is probably the most popular in. And so, and he got shot in Pennsylvania, let's not forget that either. So all of those things combined, I'm still just not sure he's the best pick.
So let's take a look at, you're talking about Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who is doing his very best Obama impression at all times, popular in the state, got easily elected. Let's take a listen to him.
Again, you could not have a clearer contrast in this race. You could not have a clearer contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And let me tell you something, he's pretty afraid. Y'all see, he's backing out of the debate now. He's afraid to stand toe-to-toe with our vice president. And you know why that is? It's not just because she's a skilled debater. It's not just because she's got the right positions on the issues that matter most to the good people of Pennsylvania and this country. It's because he can't run away from his record any longer.
Yeah.
Think about it. 4 years as president. Guy stacks the NLRB with a bunch of corporate folks who have tried to rip away your rights every step of the way. We can't go back to that, and he can't defend that.
Doing his best Obama impression.
So much.
Listen, you can hate him, but listen to this. Fox News favorability.
So much.
Fox News favorability. Kamala Harris, 49-49. This is in the state of Pennsylvania. Donald Trump, 46-43. Josh Shapiro, 61-32. He is up there with favorability with Andy Beshear in terms of D governors in at least swing and or red states. So a 61% approval rating, a 2/3 increase for favorability versus disfavor in the 49-49 battleground state. That's as good as it gets.
So here's a couple of issues with Shapiro. First of all, I fucking hate that fake Obama impression. There is an entire generation of Democratic politicians, Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, this dude apparently, who modeled their entire speaking cadence after Barack Obama. His might be the most shameless I have ever heard.
Yeah, well,
it's bad.
The whisper combined with the upswing.
You can just hear his next line being like, "Don't boo, vote." No, okay. But that's just my personal, my personal issue in terms of my irritation with his speech cadence. But in terms of, what could be some knocks on him, because there's no doubt the electoral record and the favorability is impressive. You're looking at a swing state, et cetera, critical swing state. Number one, he compared pro-Palestine protesters to the KKK. And all of the youthful excitement and willingness to give Kamala a chance, all of that stuff, you can instantly deflate it by having someone who went so hard against the protesters. And that is a distinction from the other candidates in the race who either were quiet or, in Tim Walz's case, actually was, sort of affirmatively encouraging, of the uncommitted movement, et cetera. So I think Kamala's strength right now, the reason she's come up in the polls so quickly, is in large part because she's doing so much better with young voters. You risk that if you have a choice like Josh Shapiro. So that's one. Number two, he's got an issue with unions. He's this is again an Obama thing, big charter school guy. So you've got an issue with unions.
Teachers unions.
And unions in general. And Kamala has been close with SEIU and other parts of the labor movement. So that could be an issue. The other issue is that there are allegations he covered up sexual harassment within his office. So those are some of the potential drawbacks for Josh Shapiro.
We'll see. I would still pick him. I think that the Palestine stuff, I still think it's relatively marginal if we look at the overall number of people. Young people don't vote, period. They may care about it. Doesn't mean they're going to vote at higher levels. Boomers are disproportionately much more pro-Israel. This is the suburban ladies election, not necessarily the college student election. It'd be nice if they could.
All of these constituencies matter, though.
Yes, but I think the suburban ladies,
add up
the
to
suburban 38-year-old ladies matter a lot more, I think, than younger people. Also, in general,
you've got those that you don't have to do anything to win
these young
those people.
You would have to presume that there are single issue voter on Israel Gaza, which I do not believe at all. I don't think there's less than 300,000 people in this country who are going to single issue vote on Israel Gaza. So that means people are multifaceted, and a lot of them are either going to pull the thing or not. And so I think they probably will come out to vote for her because all she's got to do is throw some crumbs in their direction, and they'll probably come along anyways. They can rationalize in your head. Second, on the teachers union thing, I agree that it's not necessarily like the best thing, but on the charter schools and all that, this is very unfortunate, but union membership is near all-time lows in the United States. So organized SEIU coming out to vote, even Teamsters vote and all that stuff, it doesn't matter as much as it did, let's say, in the 1970s.
Sure.
Yeah.
But there's still an important, influential part of the Democratic coalition in terms of fundraising, in terms of organizing, et cetera. And so I think you're right with regard to young people in terms of voting.
Yeah.
But all of the enthusiasm that we're talking about, like that matters as well, that you're going to have people who are out there door knocking, phone banking, memeing on, with the Zoomers on TikTok, all of that stuff. And you risk that with the Shapiro where you do not risk that with a Walz. So, that's why I think he's a safer pick. Nate Silver did a big analysis of how much it matters where a VP pick is from. And the home state advantage that is conferred is very, 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 very slight.
Al Gore is the classic example.
Didn't win Tennessee. Yeah.
Here's my counter to that. This is an exceptional time. Kamala coming in so late in the game. I think the VP pick for her is going to matter more than any modern VP pick in modern history, simply because it's definitional. It's like who is coming on board. Here is where I think Shapiro, too, being such a unique figure. A governor is a very different pick than a senator. Let's be honest. Senator is much more of a Washington figurehead to a state like Al Gore was, as opposed to the popular governor who people in Pennsylvania know and like having him on the ticket. I'm just saying, there's a lot of confounding factors, so you're not wrong. But it's like me saying debates don't matter in history. It's they don't matter until they do.
Right.
And so this is where, if there was ever a time where the VP pick for her mattered the most, I think it would be this election.
All right, we've got another popular governor, this one of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, who got himself elected and then reelected, as I said before, most popular Democratic governor in the entire country, in spite of it being the state of Kentucky. A lot of that, I think, not being in the state anymore, but a lot of that, I think, has come from the fact that he, number one, has leaned into a populist message in a populist state of Kentucky. He got elected initially on the back of the teacher strike wave and in rejection of these sort of cutting pensions and going after public services. That was very effective for him. And then he has brought a lot of jobs to the state of Kentucky. A lot of these new battery manufacturing plants are coming to Kentucky. So he's had a record that has been very clear in terms of delivering benefits. And it happens that a lot of those jobs have been new economy, green energy jobs. So that's what has been a strength for him. In terms of the state of Kentucky, let's take a listen to a little bit of how he sounds.
This is not my first speech on the back of a pickup truck. If you don't know me, I'm the guy that last November beat Mitch McConnell's hand-picked candidate. I'm the guy that last November beat Donald Trump's hand-picked candidate. Are you ready to vote? Are you ready to beat Donald Trump? Are you ready to beat J.D. Vance? Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris, President of the United States of America? God bless. Thank you all. Let's win this race.
So that was him at a campaign stop in Georgia, a Kamala Harris campaign event in Georgia. He really came out. He's been pitching himself pretty hard. He's been trying pretty hard in the VP stakes, Saagar, I think it's fair to say. But one of the things that went viral for him was him making a contrast with J.D. Vance and going after him, you're not from here, you're not really a representative of Appalachia. And Andy's got that, that nice country drawl and his red state record. Downside for him is it's obviously not a swing state. So, does that factor into the decision here? Does he come off as trying a little too hard in terms of getting the VP nomination? That's another issue. One point in his favor and Josh Shapiro's favor and Roy Cooper's favor is they all were attorneys general, and they all coincided, at least briefly, I think, with Kamala Harris's tenure as attorney general. So if she's looking for another, like, we're going to prosecute the case, or even just someone that she knows and has familiarity with, that's an asset for those three candidates in particular.
Andy's a talented politician, but it's not 1992 Bill Clinton era, where, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going for Southern Democrats who might be, like, that constituency that he could flip doesn't exist. Like, we're going all in for 271 electoral votes. We need to go Midwest here. That's the only logical choice that makes any sense to me. We're playing to win in the game of pure margins of more than 1% in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Georgia, great. Arizona, great. Nevada, great. But we actually need to win this election. So for her, I think if you look at that, picking somebody from an R+33 state just doesn't make any damn sense.
The case for him would be, you know, it's not about I'm going to deliver Kentucky. It's I have a proven track record of winning over skeptical people. And, you know, the Southern accent, it just codes as conservative. It just does. And so the, you know, he's like the whitest man on the planet. Yes. People were sharing like the picture of him and his family and whatever. They're like, if you're looking for the whitest person available, this is your guy. So, you know, he codes moderate to conservative. And I think he's governed in a relatively moderate to conservative way of Kentucky, but he is good on labor and some key issues there. So in any case, that would be the case for him, as not like, I'm going to deliver you the state of Kentucky, but I have a track record of appealing to the type of voters that are going to be most skeptical of you, and you can see it in the fact that I got elected and reelected. So I think that would be the case for him.
It's a fine case. I don't think it exists today. I actually think in an open primary is a very different story. I think in an open general election, but in today, who she is, where she's running, and who she needs to win, I don't think it makes as much sense, especially when you consider who he's up against. I also do think he's trying too hard. I mean, in a certain sense, I don't blame him, because I'm like, listen, Kentucky governor, where do you go? You know, and isn't he already rich? He comes from a political dynasty. It's like, well, what else? What else do we have left? VP, that sounds great. A heartbeat away from the presidency. So I don't blame him per se, but this is politics, man. You can't wear your ambition too much on your sleeve.
Yeah. You know, he does come from a political dynasty family. I don't know. I don't know that he personally is like that wealthy. He's not like one of the super blue bloods in the state of Kentucky, but he definitely the limit for
only 5 million.
Like, you're not going to win a Senate seat as a Democrat in Kentucky at this point, even if you are Andy Beshear. Like, it's just that ship has sailed. So yeah, he's term limited out as governor. What else is he going to do? So he's making the pitch hard. This is his chance. Or, you know, maybe if this doesn't work out for him and then Kamala loses, which is still the, you know, more likely than not, I would say, then he's built up some sort of a national profile that he could use to make a potential 2028 run. So I don't blame him for really taking the moment to get out there as best he can either. I knew the guy a little bit when I lived in the state of Kentucky, and he does just come off as like minivan dad. Like, you know, in spite of coming from the political dynasty family, he does come off as very sort of like normal, relatable, et cetera. He does not come off as a superstar, charismatic political talent. That is not him whatsoever. But in any case, let's move on to the next governor on our list, Roy Cooper of North Carolina, which I read a whole thing about how he doesn't pronounce his last name Cooper. He pronounces it with, like, you know, the way you say foot with the O and
Cooper.
Foot. Cooper. Apparently it's like a Eastern North Carolina pronunciation, but let me tell you, buddy, the whole nation's going to be calling you Roy Cooper. Governor of North Carolina, obviously a red state, popular figure, has governed as like a very sort of cautious, moderate type politician, exactly what you would expect from a North Carolina Democrat. Let's take a listen to him.
Donald Trump won North Carolina in 2020 by 1.3%. This was his closest win and Joe Biden's closest loss. This was during COVID, during 2020. Democrats really weren't doing the door-to-door, taking people to the polls work that Republicans continued to do through COVID. I believe that North Carolina is definitely on the table to win. I've told the president that. I told the vice president that when she and I talked the other day. It was clear that the Biden-Harris campaign was targeting North Carolina. I think it's important for them to continue to do that. The threat to democracy that Donald Trump brings, the threat to women's reproductive freedom that he brings. And I think that's a message that will resound not only in North Carolina, but across the country.
So if you look up generic Democrat in the textbook, like, this is the guy. He's on a central casting. You can imagine playing like the president in a movie. You know, he's, I guess those are the advantages for him. He's got that look. He's just got that very, like, you know, standard politician kind of vibe, and that's kind of how he's governed. The other big edge I think he has, in addition to being popular in the state of North Carolina, which maybe the Kamala Harris team wants to put in play, the other big advantage that he has is I think he and Kamala have the longest personal relationship. And that may count for a lot. If I was her and I was thinking about this choice and thinking about who I wanted to serve in the White House with for 4, potentially 8 years, I think I would really value actually knowing the person and having some track record of comfort with them, because this is going to be a very important person in your life. So to me, that's kind of the most compelling reason why I think he's on the short list. To me, listen, as a communicator, he doesn't really do anything for me. It's not like a negative. He's fine. He doesn't get my heart racing. But I think he would definitely be a do no harm type of candidate and could potentially help them to make North Carolina a theoretical possibility.
You could do worse. Yeah, this is where I'm a little bit more skeptical. The only thing in the case is the personal relationship. Look, throughout history, almost always, the vice presidential pick and the president are not close. It's very rare to have a close vice president and president. The president always distrusts the vice president because they think they want to be president.
Right.
It's one of the reasons that Dick Cheney was very unique, because he never wanted to be president, and thus he was able to at least have some credibility with Bush. But that is an aberration. The Kamala-Biden relationship is the typical one, where you put all the shit jobs on them, you make them look bad, you squeeze them out. They think that they're the heir appointed. They beef with the personal staff, and then something happens, like Biden decided not to run, and they end up having to endorse them anyway, and there's a lot of bad blood that eventually gets written about 10, 15 years from now. That is the typical vice presidential relationship.
Yeah,
so.
Well, part of one of the knocks I've seen on Shapiro is that he is one that wears his ambition very heavily.
I could see that. That's true.
And so if she's worried about that, about him being more interested in his own political climb than her political climb, that could be a knock on him. But then again, all of these guys are comparatively young comparative to Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So I would think that any one of them would have their eye ultimately on the presidency if they got picked for the slot. So the last candidate that we have on the list is the one senator who has been consistently named as one of the potential top choices. This is Arizona's Mark Kelly. Let's take a listen to him.
What is wrong about a woman who has been raped to not want to be able to terminate a pregnancy? What's wrong with that? I have 2 daughters and a granddaughter. I really worry about their rights if Donald Trump is elected again and J.D. Vance is the vice president. I mean, that really concerns me.
So there you get a sense of him. Again, he's not an electric communicator, but he does have a good reputation in the state of Arizona. If that's, if you think that he would bring something in terms of helping to deliver that state, perhaps you pick him. This also would be someone that Kamala Harris knows, I think, fairly well. So perhaps that's an added advantage. There is some reporting that this is like the guy Obama wants. So I don't know how much that counts for. I don't know if that's true, and I don't know how much that counts for. But it does feel like Democrats will kind of like fall in love with this, astronaut hero persona with him. So I could see him getting picked. The issue for him, 2 issues for him. Number one, the Senate seat. Look, a Democratic governor gets to appoint the replacement, so that gives them a good leg up in terms of reelection, but you still are then making it a lot iffier that Democrats will be able to hold on to that seat. And the other thing is unions don't like him. He was basically drag kicking and screaming through this process to supporting the PRO Act. Big red flag there. There were some other nominees that the Biden administration wanted to get through that were important to labor that he was skeptical or not supportive of. So he doesn't have a great track record with labor. Maybe that's a hindrance for him as well.
The sleeper thing for him, he's actually a big border hawk. He won his race by running against Biden on the border, which a lot of people didn't expect. But anyway, I mean, that's not a bad thing.
Well, I do think that's one of the things that the Harris people would consider as like, okay, does this person help me with our weakest issue, which is immigration?
Yeah, so that would be the only. Also, look, America loves an astronaut. There's a reason that it's a very selective program, and you know how many astronaut politicians we had, from Bill Nelson to all these senators. People love it. It's a legacy of like the Mercury 7 program. So I wouldn't put it past that being a thing. He also in terms of his own record and the personal story, there's some inspiration
with Gabby Giffords
there with Gabby Giffords. So I think that that's not something I would discount per se. I would simply not pick him because it'd be bad for the large D Democratic Party, and I don't think Arizona is in play. But the border issue is one where he would lend her some credibility on the issue. And now let's think about this too. whoever she picks is going to go up against JD. All JD talks about these days on the campaign trail is immigration. So you need somebody who could stand toe-to-toe there with immigration. Now, that said, how many people are basing their vote on the vice president debate? Let's be honest, it's like 0%. So, these are all like hypotheticals that I'm not just bringing up.
Yeah.
Just making the case that for one that exists.
Yeah. I mean, my overriding assumption is that whoever I want to be the least is probably the person they're going to pick. So it's going to be Mark Kelly or Josh Shapiro. And by the way, I've met Mark Kelly and I've met Gabby Giffords both before and after she was shot. And they're very kind, lovely, like on a personal level people. It's not personal. I just, labor's important to me. It's been bad on labor. So it's not,
there you go.
Not my pick. But we'll just quickly go through these last couple of elements. You can put up the next one on the screen. So apparently the big union choice is Tim Walz. Governor, as I mentioned before of Minnesota. They like him. They feel comfortable with him. He was, he was a public school teacher, so he was in a union himself. That always helps. Let's go ahead and put the next one up on the screen. This we mentioned before, the New York Times. The quiet bond Kamala Harris forged with 3 VP contenders. I was a little bit wrong in what I said earlier. Roy Cooper and Andy Beshear both directly overlapped with Kamala as attorneys general. Josh Shapiro came into the job as she was leaving her post and as Trump entered the White House, but she may like that they share that AG background. There was one report that she wanted someone with quote unquote executive experience. That would seem to indicate a governor, not Mark Kelly, but who knows if that's true or not. And then the last thing that I mentioned before, which might be a point in Tim Walz's favor, is the fact that he really came up with this framing, the weird framing, which the Harris campaign has gone all in on. And I'm already seeing signs at their rallies of like, these people are weird or whatever. But this is a press release where they said this also is emblematic of the massive tone shift since the Biden team has become the Harris team. They put out this press release. The headline is Statement on a 78-Year-Old Criminal's Fox News Appearance. And one of the talking points here is Trump is old and quite weird, ? So, they really are leaning into that and embrace that. So for what it's worth, that's where we are.
Yeah, it could be a sign. We'll see. That's my only thing. I'm not really going to make a guess. I think there's an equal chance. I would say relatively equal chance between Tim Walz and Josh Shapiro. I would say those are the front runners. In my opinion, she could shock us by picking a Kelly or a Cooper.
Yeah.
I don't think Beshear is in the running at all. I don't see it.
Like I said, I just assume whoever I want the list is going to be the one that gets picked. So
that's most
Josh
of what happens to
Shapiro,
us on the show.
congratulations.
Yeah. All right. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.